In this video, I will present the grounding argument for the existence of God. It's an original argument of my own, but it's not entirely unique because it is a version of the argument from Contingency, similar to that of Professor Josh Rasmussen. But it argues from causality a little differently than some other arguments and addresses the gap problem a little differently as well. The grounding argument goes like this. If there is causality, then there exists a metaphysically necessary foundation that grounds the causality. There is causality. If there is a metaphysically necessary foundation, then the foundation is unlimited in being. Therefore, there is a metaphysically necessary foundation that is unlimited in being. Premise 2 is undeniable to me. Clearly, things cause other things to happen. Causality is real. So the argument to me comes down to premises 1 and 3. Premise 1 seems very plausible because why would one contingent thing, as in a thing that does not have to exist or have to be the grounding for other things, have any causal control over another contingent thing? Why would one contingent thing causally obey another? Saying that it's due to the laws of physics will not explain this if the laws of physics are contingent as well. Saying that it's due to something's nature will also not explain it if something's nature is contingent. But a metaphysically necessary foundation can require other things to causally obey it because a metaphysically necessary foundation necessarily has ontological priority over the rest of reality, while contingent things don't. Yet, if one argues that the laws of physics or things' natures are metaphysically necessary, then that entails a metaphysically necessary foundation after all, so then that grants premise 1. So a metaphysically necessary foundation is the only thing, even in principle, that can ground the existence of causality. So if causality exists, then a metaphysically necessary foundation must exist to ground the causality. A metaphysically necessary foundation can also then share its causal power with other things, so that contingent things too can then cause other things in a concurrent fashion with the metaphysically necessary foundation. Now, in defense of premise 3, the metaphysically necessary foundation can only have limitations of being if those limitations are metaphysically necessary. And it can't be something else that causes the necessary foundation to be limited in being. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a necessary foundation. A necessary foundation is something that doesn't have an outside cause. Rather, something that is necessary exists by its very necessity. It cannot have a cause of its existence. So, a metaphysically necessary foundation itself would have to then be what accounts for its limitations in being. Yet, limitations in being come in varieties, while being unlimited in being does not come in varieties. Rather, it is clearly one of a kind. And since it is one of a kind as opposed to one of many, being unlimited in being would then be the default position until the foundation is limited in its being. So, logically, prior to being limited in its being, the foundation would have to thereby be unlimited in its being, and its nature would then have to subsequently limit its own being. But a necessary foundation cannot be altered in its being because it's metaphysically necessary. And so a metaphysically necessary foundation's nature would not be able to place a limit and thereby change its being. So a metaphysically necessary foundation would have to be unlimited in its being. And so the only features that it can lack, since it's unlimited in its being, are features that represent a limitation in being. Thereby, a metaphysically necessary foundation must be unlimited in being, thereby unlimited in presence, power, intelligence, empathy, and interestingly enough, unlimited in hate. Since these are all features of being that don't require a limitation in order to exist, something unlimited in its being would thereby have these features. Yet, empathy can only be had for other beings, while hatred can be had for actions. So, the attributes of empathy and hatred can both be unlimited, but work together in how they are directed. A being that's unlimited in empathy and unlimited in hate will necessarily love people and necessarily hate injustice shown towards people, so it'd be a supremely moral being. Yet, what then about the Trinity? Is God not limited to being three persons? What's important to recognize, though, is that the Trinity flows from God's nature, as the Father sources the Son, who then sources the Holy Spirit. This is not a limitation placed upon God's being, rather it's a procession from God's being. So while a metaphysically necessary being cannot have a limit placed upon its being, it can still necessarily proceed as a trinity. It can still necessarily proceed and source persons to partake of its being. So the Trinity is not in conflict with the claim that the metaphysically necessary foundation is unlimited in its being. The conclusion of the argument then follows that a metaphysically necessary foundation that is unlimited in its being exists, and this clearly is the traditional understanding of God. There are more objections that can be addressed to the argument, but hopefully the argument is clear, and thanks for watching.